107.5 Wgci, the Shy's #1 for hip hop and R&B. We are the morning show with Leon Rogers, Kendra G, myself, Kyle. It's been a lot of talk this past week or so about the things that are going on with R. Kelly, and it's definitely hitting home here in Chicago. So today, right now, we're going to speak with Miss Kim Foxx, the Cook County Attorney's DA. Yes? District Attorney. Cook County District Attorney. Let me make sure I'm saying it right.
State's Attorney.
State's Attorney.
Illinois
For the entire, but you're representing here in Cook County.
That's correct.
And Chicago is a part of Cook County. So you're hands-on right here in the city with everything that's going on.
That's right.
We know recently you've come out and you've made a plea for everybody that is in the city that may have any information that might lead to any information or any investigation pertaining to R. Kelly to come forward, because you said you can't do anything without it.
That's right. I think in the wake of what happened with the release of the docuseries, there was a lot of anxiety and people saying, what are you going to do? What's going to happen? And what people have to realize is that in order for there to be an investigation, you actually have to have people who come forward. Someone has to say, I've been hurt or I've witnessed somebody being hurt. The docuseries alone does not mean anything. Those are allegations, and only allegations. And so in order for us to determine whether there was something criminal happening, people have to be willing to come forward. It's important that we remember Mr. Kelly is not convicted of any crimes. There are no charges pending from him or with him here. And so this is, if people have information that they believe there should be something, to bring that information forward.
Yeah.
So, did you watch the docuseries?
I did.
And watching the docuseries, I know you are the DA, but what were your thoughts of watching the docuseries?
Yeah, I watched the docuseries wearing a couple different hats. I wear it as a prosecutor, and listening to the allegations and listening to the victims tell their stories. I watched it as a mother of teenage girls in my home, and imagining what it must feel like as a parent to tell the stories that were being told. I watched that as a sex assault survivor. And what it would feel like to talk about that abuse for millions of people to see. And so I watched it as a wife. I watched as my husband, sat beat red the whole way through. And so I was, quite frankly, I was sickened by the allegations. And again, they're allegations. And, if in fact true, horribly heartbroken.
Wow. So basically, in layman's terms, for some of the people out there that probably don't get what you're saying, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
That's right.
Okay. And when you say people need to come forward, is there certain things that they need to come forward with, or is it like any and anything that they come and talk to you, you can go and make a case? Or it has to be particulars?
That's a great question. We certainly want people to come with facts, right? Like not my cousin told me she had heard that her barber said that he had, that's still rumor and innuendo. What we want is if something has happened to you, and we're not putting a time constraint on it. We're not saying just within the last 2 years. If you have information that something has happened to you, come and tell us what that is. If you personally saw something happen to someone, and even if that person hasn't called yet, you can come forward too. But what we don't want to do, and we can't do in the criminal justice system, is just be off of rumor. What is it that we can vet? Are we able to go back? If you said something happened at this particular house, did that house actually exist in 1997? If you said something happened at an address, we got to be able to go back and fact check that happened there. So that's what we're looking for.
I was just doing the headlines the other day. It might have just been like yesterday or today. And they were saying that since you've come out and asked for people to come forward, that you guys have received some information. Does any of that information seem to be credible at this point?
It's too early to tell. Okay. I mean, we have to do a thorough vetting of every piece of information that we get. Again, Mr. Kelly is innocent until proven guilty, and I don't want to speak or do anything that would taint what that process looks like.
Understood.
When you watch the docuseries, what potential, if true, because we will keep saying the word allegations, but if were true, what charges did you witness that he could be charged for from the docuseries?
I don't want to speak specifically because, again, the questions, we're in Cook County, so everything that we deal with is anything that happened here in Cook County, so Chicago or its surrounding suburbs. But again, what was discussed in the docuseries was everything from criminal sexual abuse, the underage sexual abuse, to domestic violence and everything in between.
So we saw that Georgia has an investigation going on right now, because I'm happy you brought that up, because what we saw in the docuseries, the allegations of the house that was in Georgia, that you could not prosecute and he could not be held accountable here for that. That would have to be the city of Atlanta to take care of that.
That's correct. And we have to be very clear. The only thing that the Cook County State's Attorney's Office has jurisdiction over is anything that happened in Cook County. Now, people have called from various places. Now, if you live in Georgia now, but something happened in Cook County, we can certainly investigate that. But the actions themselves had to have occurred here in Cook County.
I'm sorry. You want to go ahead?
Yeah, I want to ask, in cases like these, I don't know if you've ever dealt with them before, concerning pedophile and crimes against children. There's obviously a lot of mental stress on both parties, as far as the accused and the accusers themselves. As far as the accused goes, so say, for instance, Mr. Kelly, if allegedly he did these things and he has said that him and his brother were molested before, do courts take that into consideration, or is it just really looked at as a crime and not anything as far as the mental state goes of the person that has done these horrible crimes against children?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is what we would call mitigation, right? Like something that explains why or how you got to where you are. That usually comes at sentencing. It doesn't negate that you have done something bad. I mean, I as a survivor myself, there are many survivors who don't then turn around and engage in abuse of others, but it does explain some of the behavior. So in mitigation, that can be used. I will say, to your point, people have asked me, well, why R. Kelly? Why this? How we handle sex abuse cases is really, it's the most underreported crime that we have. When you have to ask people to come forward and talk about the most humiliating thing that may have happened to them, being sexually assaulted, having to talk to a police officer, then a prosecutor, having to potentially a doctor, go in front of a jury, it is one of the most daunting things that you can do. And so a lot of people would rather just not talk about it. Doesn't mean that it didn't happen. Doesn't mean that if you didn't outcry, tell somebody for 10, 15 years that it didn't happen. One of the reasons that I talk about my sexual abuse, we never called the police, right? We didn't. I think my mother made a choice for me, like, look, we'll handle this ourselves, and literally took it to the streets. And that's sometimes what we do in our communities. But when we say, listen, someone might have been victimized and didn't say anything, our rush shouldn't be to judge them, the victim, alleged victim. We should hear it out. And so I just want to be clear that this isn't about one person. We just charged this week a coach at a high school on the west side for engaging in inappropriate behavior with a 14-year-old. So where people are focused just on R. Kelly, these kinds of things, these types of allegations happen every single day. And how we talk about this case has reverberations. Young women, young girls are listening to what we are saying. And their reluctance to come forward, how we handle this, will have long-term reverberating effects. And so again, innocent until proven guilty, but how we talk about the players in this is really, really important.
Ms. Kim Foxx is hanging out with us right now. I want to bring a little bit of clarity to this specific thing. This whole thing stems from girls being underage dealing with R. Kelly. So we're dealing with a legal aspect of consent, and then we're also dealing with an immoral accent, because a moral stance, because you could be legal, but it's still not right morally. You know what I mean? So could you let everybody know exactly what is the legal age of consent? Who's considered a minor, who's not, and in situations like this, and then how you would handle that when one is too young.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I can only deal with the the legal piece
Yeah.
of consent, what people's morality issues are. That's not for me to say. But the age of consent is 17,
17.
in Illinois. And there's some nuances between, however many years if you are 17 versus somebody is 12. So there's a lot of variation even in that. And so someone who is 14, just to be clear, or 15, cannot legally consent. They can't legally consent. They can't even legally consent with another 14-year-old. So we should be clear. So if they're like, it's not necessarily just sinister. 2 14-year-olds can't consent to have sex with each other.
They're breaking the law.
They are breaking the law.
Okay, so we're talking to Kim Foxx, the Cook County State's Attorney, her exact title. So a couple things. Non-disclosure forms, because there has been a lot of conversation that people that may have had dealings with, because we're talking about R. Kelly in this case, if they sign a non-disclosure form, are they still able to even come forward? Because haven't they signed a form that says that you can never talk about anything?
Without risk of penalty.
Right.
But they can talk.
Okay.
And again, the crime, to be clear, when we charge people in criminal court, it's the people versus, right? It's not that particular individual. It is the people. So when someone is accused of violating a child or violating someone, we are all the victims of that. We are all affected by that. That's why it's the people versus that person. And so you can't waive the people's right to prosecute, even in a civil document. So you can't say, well, I can't say anything. You don't ever have the opportunity to waive your criminal rights.
Got you. And then you mentioned you're not worried about years. So let's just say a particular person is 30 years old, but they had a situation, and we're just talking about R. Kelly, so I'll use his name, at 16. So that's 12 years. Are they still able to contact you, or is that too long?
We're not putting any time stamps on it. Anyone can contact us. But I also want to be clear. We may talk, review, and there may be nothing that can happen.
Gotcha.
Right? It's also, these cases are hard. These are difficult cases. In cases that are that old, one of the things that we find is people's memories get fuzzy. I might not remember what I did like 3 days ago, but you then someone's going to ask you a million questions about that. So it is, just because it's been a long time doesn't mean that you can't come. It does make those cases difficult, but again, bring the information and we can work that out.
Does the statute of limitations play anywhere in that when it's an old case like that?
Again, it depends on when the act occurred, what was the statute at the time. The laws were changed back in 2017, for example, to take the statute of limitations away in child sex abuse cases after the Dennis Hastert case. Just for quick understanding for our people, Dennis Hastert used to be one of the most powerful congressmen in the United States. 30 years ago, he was a coach at a high school down in central Illinois, and he was sexually abusing young boys on the team. He had paid them money. He had been paying them money for years to be quiet, and at some point, it was then found out. And he then later admitted that, in fact, he had engaged in this behavior, but it had been past the statute of limitations. So the question was, should you be able to get away with that because you paid your victim, because you waited 30 years? And so the Illinois General Assembly changed the law. Now, I ask you, I think we were all outraged when a powerful congressman used his position and paid people off and waited 30 years to blame responsibility. We were not questioning the credibility of the young man's family who came forward. He was a young man who wanted to wrestle, and this man took advantage of him.
Right.
So taking your state's attorney hat off for a minute, if you can.
Yeah.
If you can.
I can.
If you were in a room with Mr. Kelly and you had a question that you want to ask him, is there anything that you would say to him as a mother, like as a plea?
No, I mean, my head is stuck on my head. I think my plea is for us as the Black community. If I'm being honest, people are. I'm not so much. I want to vet these allegations so that we can, if there's some accountability to be had there, we can, and if there's not, we can move on. But I want for us to think about not just entertainers, But to think about where these types of things can happen, whether it is a coach or the person at church or someone in the neighborhood, these things aren't new. They're not new. And so I don't have a message for one individual. My message is for all of us to say, let's step back and take a breath. And think about the fact that we heard number of young women talk about humiliating experiences that were violations of their body. And whether we can prove that that happened or not prove that that happened, what does that say about how we want to take care of our girls in our community? The legal system will be there. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The reverberating effects that I want us to think about is, do we want our girls to be afraid to come forward when something happens to them? Right. And that's what I hope is the lasting legacy of all of this, is that we are telling our girls that they matter, that they are valued, separate and apart from the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
I know you got to go, but I got to ask about Azriel Clary. She was in the docuseries, and we saw her parents throwing rocks, thinking that she could be in R. Kelly's studio. A lot of conversation about her being of age and the wellness check and how come her parents haven't been able to see her for 3 years. Can you explain, like, how does that work? Like, she's over, I think she's 21 now, and they said that they have these wellness checks, but they are not involved in the wellness checks. Yeah. So how does that work? Like, how can it be even possible that they can literally not see her for 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, in layman's terms, she's grown, right? And someone can be estranged from their family. Someone can decide, you know what, I'm not rocking with them anymore. And they may want to still see you and try and all of that, but she may have made that choice. We don't know. What they're saying is that this is not her choice. The only person who can tell you that it is would be her. Mm-hmm. And if there is any indication where, like, look, she looked harmed, we do wellness checks all the time. We do, your grandmother ain't nobody heard from all day. Someone can go and knock and, they may not hear anything. They aren't going to knock down your grandmother's door unless there's some indication that someone is at risk. But you have, as an adult, the right to choose who you speak to, who you let into your life. And as frustrating as that may be on the outside, if that's a choice that she has made, there's not much that relatives can do.
Was there a wellness check done here in Chicago with her?
I can't speak to that.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you coming by today. A lot of people are talking about this. A lot of questions are trying to be answered, and we appreciate you coming by, putting some light on the situation. State's Attorney for Cook County, Kim Foxx, is here today. One thing before you go, I know you put this out earlier, for people that do want to reach out to you, how can they reach out to you? How can they get in touch with you?
Sure. They can call 773-674-6492. 773-674-6492.
I just want to say thank you for putting me on your staff as the official paper
Oh my
filer
God.
for the state's attorney. Now I'm going to hold my position with honor, and I'm going to file the hell out of them papers. I want the best paper filer.
Kim Foxx, we appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
Thank y'all. Thank you.